The merciless glare of studio lights beat down, a searing inquisition on what had begun as a placid Monday evening in Baton Rouge. What was meant to be a routine political dissection of a federal education reform bill soon verged on outright conflagration. Jasmine Crockett, a force of nature in legislation and a former defense attorney, was meticulously unraveling the intricate knots of school funding disparities. Then, Senator John Neely Kennedy made his move. He leaned in, a predatory glint in his eye, and a sound, not quite a laugh, but a deliberate, tearing scoff, slithered from his lips, engineered to pierce microphones, designed to echo in memory. "Well, now," Jasmine, Kennedy purred, her name laced with a condescending familiarity that suggested a wayward schoolchild. "I'm not sure you read the full text of that bill, or, if you did, maybe you didn't quite get it. Happens sometimes with lawyers who jump into politics too fast." A chilling, humorless smile, a rigid mask of absolute control, stretched across his face. The studio air thickened to an unbearable density, the silence a tangible weight, a suffocating premonition of inevitable collision. Even the moderator seemed paralyzed, his blinks agonizingly slow. Jasmine Crockett remained unervingly still. She didn't flinch, didn't utter a sound, didn't desperately search for a lifeline, an ally. She simply allowed the agonizing silence to stretch, an eternity unfolding on live television, before she finally spoke. "Senator," she began, her voice a calm, unwavering blade. "I've been a defense attorney for 15 years. I've read more legal language in a week than most folks in this room have in a lifetime. If you'd like, I can walk you through the funding clauses line by line." The atmosphere in the room shifted palpably, an undeniable tremor vibrating through every person present. Her words, though not loud, landed with the precise impact of carefully placed stones, steady, unshakable, irrefutable. She leaned forward just a fraction and continued. "And for the record, I ran for office after representing public school teachers pro bono. I didn't stumble into this job. I fought to be here." The moderator cleared his throat, his gaze darting nervously to the teleprompter, caught in the excruciating dilemma between cutting to a commercial break and allowing the raw drama to spectacularly unfold. But Jasmine wasn't finished. "What worries me," she added, her gaze locking onto Kennedy's with unnerving intensity, "is not that you think I didn't read the bill. It's that you did and still chose to misrepresent it." A fleeting flicker of discomfort crossed Kennedy's face, instantly masked by a forced grin as he leaned back, defeated. The energy in the room had irrevocably fractured. Robin Delgado, the principal-turned-commentator, muttered a resonant, "Well, damn," loud enough for the microphone to greedily seize. The studio audience, a silent fusion of local residents and students, held its breath, captivated, riveted. Jasmine didn't press her advantage. Instead, she seamlessly pivoted back to her original point, meticulously detailing how underfunded schools in specific zip codes were being brutally neglected in the proposed legislation. She wove cold statistics with heart-wrenching narratives. A Texarkana classroom forced to use duct-tape textbooks. A student named Trevian tragically sharing a desk due to furniture shortages. The audience began to subtly shift, the sharp political sparring giving way to a shared recognition, a profound, undeniable empathy. By the time the moderator managed to move on, a woman in the third row was silently weeping, tears streaming down her face. Senator Kennedy, meanwhile, was utterly silenced for a full 5 minutes, not out of respect, but from a sudden, desperate need to choose his words with extreme, agonizing caution. The true storm, however, was just beginning to brew online. Within a mere 7 minutes of the panel wrapping, a raw screen recording of the incendiary exchange, boldly captioned, "She ate and left no crumbs," detonated across Twitter. By the time the broadcast officially ended, the video had already amassed over 30,000 views. Jasmine Crockett, who had calmly, methodically dismantled a sitting U.S. senator without ever raising her voice, was now a white-hot trending topic. Unaware of the digital inferno she had ignited, she sat quietly in the Baton Rouge studio, nodding politely, her hand resting on a notepad she hadn't even touched during her masterful rebuttal. Kennedy, desperate to claw back control, quickly pivoted to tired talking points about fiscal responsibility and bureaucratic bloat. But his words fell flat, lifeless. Every utterance was overshadowed by the lingering, suffocating weight of their earlier confrontation, and his frantic attempts to move past it only highlighted his utter, catastrophic unpreparedness for her precise counterattack. A particular kind of silence filled the studio after the cameras ceased rolling. Not hostile, but undeniable, a collective memory of a public reckoning that had just unfolded. As guests exchanged perfunctory goodbyes, Jasmine began to leave, not lingering, not seeking validation. The host, however, intercepted her in the hallway. "Hey," he said, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "That was different." Jasmine offered a polite, knowing smile. "Different good, or different will never have her back?" He genuinely chuckled, a sound of surprise. Different, like that needed to be said. Outside, Robin Delgado gripped Jasmine's hand, her eyes wide with admiration. "Sis," she exclaimed, "I wanted to jump out my chair when you hit him with that funding clause bit. In Trevian, that part stuck." Jasmine's smile was weary, but infused with gratitude. "I wasn't trying to perform," she confessed. "I just got tired of being spoken to like I wasn't supposed to be in the room." This was the raw core of it. She'd faced countless similar moments before, in hushed courtrooms and contentious school board meetings, always forced to assert her undeniable presence. But tonight, with the unforgiving cameras rolling, the audience wasn't just jaded political insiders. It was everyday people who had endured that exact same dismissive tone, that questioning, judgmental look. Kennedy, meanwhile, exited through a different, less visible door, an assistant shielding him, a phone pressed tightly to his ear. He wasn't overtly angry, but a subtle, almost imperceptible crack in his meticulously constructed armor was painfully visible to anyone looking closely. Later, in her hotel room, Jasmine stared at her phone, which was ablaze with an inferno of notifications, texts, DMs, even a CNN producer inquiring about an interview, a beacon in the digital storm. She didn't reply immediately. She just scrolled through the viral clip, watching herself, observing the calm precision of her movements, her breathing, her deliberate pauses. Witnessing it felt heavier than simply remembering it. She didn't feel victorious. She felt exposed, as if the moment had transcended her, becoming a dissected symbol to be relentlessly analyzed. While positive comments lauded her masterclass in handling microaggressions, cruel ones dismissed her as playing the victim or arrogant. She tossed the phone aside, the brutal truth of such moments crashing over her, their utter uncontrollability. She stood, poured a glass of water, and stared at her reflection, not proud, not angry, just profoundly quiet. But outside her hotel room, the true, far-reaching impact was just beginning to unfurl, and the public wasn't about to let it quietly fade. By sunrise, Jasmine's name was emblazoned across every single digital platform, a fiery testament to her unexpected rise. The local panel segment had been clipped, stitched, captioned, subtitled, and shared with relentless, almost frenzied intensity. People weren't just watching, they were replaying, dissecting her body language, quoting her one-liners as if from a gripping courtroom drama. She didn't flinch. She waited, and then she taught. She said it with her chest, but never raised her voice. It wasn't just jaded political junkies reacting. Teachers in Pennsylvania, single mothers in Arizona, even a youth pastor in Oklahoma posted their fervent responses. A TikTok creator's commentary resonated with chilling accuracy. This isn't just about a bill. This is about the way Black women are constantly told they're too loud until they stay calm, and then they're called cold. Jasmine didn't go viral by shocking anyone. She went viral by not shocking them, by her unwavering, profound composure. The clip was replayed on local morning shows, snatched up by NPR, and even featured on The View, with Whoopi Goldberg offering a solemn nod of respect. Now that's how you handle a condescending man in a suit. But the internet, ever a dual-edged sword, also saw its darker, more venomous side emerge. A popular conservative account posted a heavily edited version, meticulously excising Kennedy's initial, damning insult and beginning precisely with Jasmine's powerful rebuttal. They branded her combative, accusing her of playing identity politics. The comments section devolved into a venomous, seething pit. Yet the unedited, full clip had already permeated too widely, too deeply to be undone. People knew the truth because they had witnessed it themselves, unfiltered, undeniable. In a small town outside Jackson, Mississippi, an 8th grade civics teacher, Mr. Farrell, paused his lesson, a momentous decision, to play the full segment for his students. Zaria, a student who rarely, if ever, spoke, articulated it best, her voice cutting through the silence. She stood up without yelling. When asked how that worked out, another student mumbled that she made him look weak. No, Zaria corrected, her young voice firm. She didn't make him look weak. He did that himself. This profound realization resonated like a shockwave in classrooms, offices, and homes across the nation, igniting conversations not just about the bill or the initial insult, but about respect and who truly earns the right to speak without being diminished. Back in Texas, Jasmine's district office was utterly inundated. Her staffers, accustomed to quiet days of routine casework, were now fielding hundreds of voicemails, a chaotic symphony of gratitude and raw emotion. Some were simple thank yous. Others were raw, emotional expressions of gratitude, a torrent of relief. One woman wept, not out of pity for Jasmine, but because she finally felt seen, acknowledged. The Baton Rouge station issued a vague, almost apologetic statement about professionalism. But the host, the same one who had spoken to Jasmine, posted a revealing, intensely personal thread on his Twitter account. Last night, I watched a woman walk into a room where she wasn't expected to speak boldly, and she rewrote the room's temperature without raising her voice once. That's not common. That's grace under pressure. Jasmine saw it, but didn't respond. She didn't need to. Her office manager, Leslie, found her buried deep in housing appeals, asking if she was good. Jasmine, rooted firmly in her unwavering purpose, simply smiled. I'm good. Long before the cameras and the glaring headlines, Jasmine Crockett fought unseen battles that forged her unyielding spirit. As a determined law school graduate, she navigated the labyrinthine Dallas County courthouse, her ill-fitting suits and worn shoes a silent, poignant testament to her unwavering commitment. Her reputation wasn't meticulously built on flashy, high-profile cases, but on the quiet, crucial, often unnoticed work that truly mattered. In 2010, she defended Dante, a 17-year-old accused of car theft with flimsy, almost non-existent evidence. She worked that case with a fierce, singular focus, uncovering damning surveillance footage, school records, forcing the court to confront the irrefutable timeline. When the charges were finally dropped, Dante's mother embraced her with bone-crushing, tearful gratitude. Yet, what truly lingered with her was a moment in the quiet hallway, when a seasoned defense attorney, his name etched into the very history of the building, pulled her aside. "You made your point," he cautioned, his voice low, "but don't push too hard next time. People don't like being shown up." Jasmine, genuinely confused, replied that she was only trying to keep a kid out of lockup. He smiled, that same tight-lipped, almost predatory smile Kennedy would later perfectly employ. "Just saying, watch how you play the game." That chilling line haunted her, yet she learned to navigate the treacherous game on her own fiercely independent terms. She was not raised to be quiet, to be easily silenced. Her mother, Denise, a librarian, meticulously tracked students desperately needing help with applications, a quiet force for change. Her father, a stoic diesel mechanic, taught her to stand tall even when she felt impossibly small. "Folks don't have to like you," he'd often say. "They just need to respect what you bring to the table." Despite the weariness, the constant, exhausting proving of her worth, she persevered, her spirit unbroken. Quiet calls from former clients who had found unexpected success, emails from grateful teachers requesting interviews for civics projects. These were the enduring embers that kept her burning, a quiet fire. So, when she finally ran for office, it wasn't for the bright, fleeting spotlight, but out of a profound exhaustion with watching bad decisions mercilessly crush those without a voice at the table, those perpetually overlooked. The night before the Baton Rouge panel, she was on the phone for 27 grueling minutes, listening intently, taking meticulous notes, asking probing questions of a woman in Tulsa fighting for broadband in her rural school district. Kennedy's catastrophic misjudgment wasn't just about her knowledge. It was a profound, almost criminal underestimation of the immense weight behind her every word. He mistook her profound calm for ignorance, her deliberate silence for meek submission, utterly oblivious to the countless years she had spent in rooms where the stakes were lives, not mere talking points. And when she left that panel, her past didn't simply vanish. It propelled her relentlessly forward, a powerful, unstoppable force. By Tuesday morning, Jasmine's office line had transformed into a whirlwind of incessant calls, a chaotic blend of buzzing hotline and tearful confessional. Her chief of staff, Alonzo, juggled calls with a frantic desperation. A retired superintendent from Ohio, a grandmother from Tulsa who likened her to the legendary Shirley Chisholm, and a man from Nebraska who wept openly before even speaking his name. Managing only a raw, choked, "Tell her thank you for saying what I wish my wife could have said before cancer shut her up," before hanging up, the weight of his grief palpable. Jasmine stared at her inbox, a dozen interview requests from MSNBC to a Belgian public station awaiting her immediate, overwhelmed attention. It was surreal, almost dreamlike. Going viral was anything but glamorous. It was utterly exhausting, 100 demanding voices clamoring for something from her, and only a handful, a precious few, asking how she was truly doing. The calls persisted relentlessly. A pastor in Dayton who played the clip during Sunday service, a public defender who felt profoundly seen, finally represented. But one message, a whispered, fragile voicemail, pierced through the relentless noise. "You reminded me that I'm allowed to speak." That was the one that made Jasmine press her fingers to her eyes, not in weariness from talking, but in the overwhelming fatigue of being heard, truly heard, for the first time. Later, her Aunt Carol from Shreveport, who famously never watched politics, called. "I saw that clip," she said, cutting straight to the heart of the matter. "I don't know why that man tried you, but Lord, you carried yourself like your mama taught you." "I was hollering." Jasmine chuckled, a rare moment of levity. "I thought you didn't like watching the news." "I don't," Carol replied, her voice firm, but this wasn't news. This was a reminder. "A reminder of what?" Jasmine asked, intrigued. "That we ain't got to play small just because the room's uncomfortable." The same profound message echoed from strangers, relatives, old clients, and new supporters alike. You didn't raise your voice, but you raised ours. Yet, not every voice was supportive or even merely neutral. By Wednesday, the threats began to trickle in. Anonymous emails, distorted, chilling voicemails. "Your why politics is a joke. Go back to court where you belong. You embarrassed a good man." She didn't flinch, not because it didn't sting, but because she'd been there before, weathered far worse. The very first threat had come fresh out of law school, defending a desperate tenant against a ruthless slumlord, a rock wrapped in a napkin ominously placed on her windshield. Drop the case. Her father had driven 2 hours, a silent, protective guardian, to change her locks. This wasn't new, but it wasn't normal, and she would never, ever let it be normalized. She turned off her phone, the digital noise silenced, and stepped onto the porch, seeking the quiet, comforting hum of the neighborhood. Alonzo joined her, a silent, supportive presence. "You thinking about the CNN interview?" he asked. "No," she replied, her gaze distant. "I'm thinking about how many people only listened because a man interrupted me." He nodded, a grim understanding dawning. "Think that's going to change?" Jasmine looked out at the street, her expression unreadable. Not by itself. As she braced herself for the inevitable next media wave, the man who had ignited the entire inferno remained conspicuously, eerily silent. 3 agonizing days passed without a single tweet, a press release, a solitary peep from Senator John Neely Kennedy's office. The silence was deafening, a profound void more impactful than any apology could ever have been. By Thursday, reporters circled Kennedy's Capitol Hill office like vultures, hungry for a crumb of information. Just want to comment, a local columnist pressed an aide, his voice desperate. Even 2 words. The aide mumbled about no further statements, shutting the door a little too quickly, a clear sign of panic. The damage was done, not just to Kennedy's carefully cultivated image, but to the aura of invincibility he had meticulously crafted over decades of political maneuvering. For years, he had reigned as the undisputed master of the one-liner, the charming wit, the clever quip cloaked in a buttery southern drawl. But this time, the charm faltered, it crumbled. When the world watched him smirk, condescend, and then retreat into an embarrassed silence after her composed, devastating response, his charm felt thin, a flimsy, transparent facade. Cable news seized the golden opportunity. A commentator on News Nation posed the direct, cutting question: if Senator Kennedy can't handle a calm rebuttal from a colleague without retreating behind his staff, what does that say about his confidence in his own argument? Jasmine, meanwhile, remained steadfastly, unyieldingly focused on her crucial work. She politely declined late-night show offers and high-profile podcast interviews, infamous for satirizing viral moments and turning people into caricatures. "I'm not trying to become a meme," she told Alonzo, her voice firm. "I'm trying to legislate." But the nation was still talking, buzzing with the aftermath, and sooner or later, Kennedy would have to break his agonizing silence. It finally came late Friday evening. A meticulously crafted written statement posted to his Senate website, emailed to a select few carefully chosen outlets. It was a masterpiece of evasion, a desperate, transparent attempt to appear in absolute control while saying absolutely nothing substantial. During a lively debate on education reform, my comments were mischaracterized by some online. I respect Congresswoman Crockett's passion and legal expertise. As public servants, spirited discussions are necessary to address the real challenges facing our schools. No mention of the blatant interruption, no hint of even shred of regret, just a vague, generalized acknowledgement and a subtle, almost imperceptible deflection of blame. The internet, predictably, was utterly unimpressed. She bodied him, and he dropped a paragraph from a PR intern. One user savagely posted. Another simply quote-tweeted, their words dripping with disdain. He thought this would work in 2003. It's 2025-inch. In Dallas, at a red light, Jasmine's phone buzzed with a torrent of new alerts, but she stoically ignored them. Her 14-year-old niece, Amari, scrolling intently on her tablet in the passenger seat, looked up, her eyes wide with amusement. "You see this stuff going around?" Jasmine asked, a hint of curiosity in her voice. "Yeah, they're making TikToks with your face. One guy used that clip of you saying, 'I can walk you through the funding clauses,' and synced it to a gospel beat." Jasmine burst out laughing, a genuine, unrestrained sound of surprise. "What?" Amari grinned, mischief dancing in her eyes. "It's actually fire." There is a grounding simplicity in that moment, being pulled from the relentless media maelstrom by a teenager who still saw her simply as Aunt Jazz. Back at her office, her team was fiercely split on how to respond to Kennedy's pathetic statement. She listened patiently, nodded thoughtfully, then declared, her voice firm with resolve, "We're not in the business of managing anyone's discomfort. Let him figure that out." She didn't need a counter-statement. Her words on live television, spoken with unwavering facts and calm, unyielding resolve, had already resonated deeply, irrevocably. Anything more would have diminished the raw power of her original response, and its profound, impactful restraint. Still, the weight lingered. Even the strongest shoulders can grow weary under the immense, crushing burden of public expectation. But Jasmine wasn't done, not by a long shot. While headlines buzzed with endless speculation and critics spun countless narratives, she quietly packed her bag and headed to Fort Smith, Arkansas, for a town hall that would truly test the far-reaching impact of the conversation she had ignited. Saturday mornings in Fort Smith were typically slow, almost lethargic, but this one was strikingly different. The community center was packed to the rafters before 10 a.m. Rows of folding chairs filled with older residents, their arms crossed, eyes sharp, awaiting her arrival. Jasmine Crockett had never spoken there before. It wasn't her district, not her territory. But the town's representative, deeply moved by the viral panel, had quietly, discreetly invited her. When she walked in, there were no theatrics, no grand entrances, just a solitary microphone on a simple stand. She wore a simple navy dress, her hair neatly pulled back, devoid of fanfare. No press, no cameras, just people, a sea of expectant faces. "Good morning," she said, her voice soft but resonantly clear. "I'm Jasmine Crocker, and I'm not here to lecture. I'm here to listen. And if you'll let me, I'll speak too." A few cautious nods rippled through the room, murmurs, but no applause. "Not yet." She began by speaking not of abstract theory, but of the raw, brutal reality of schools. Mice scurrying in classrooms, children tragically without lunch money, dedicated teachers forced to buy supplies with their own meager pay. A man named Earl, 73, a former factory worker, slowly stood up, his face etched with the deep, enduring lines of a long, arduous life. "I don't normally care for politicians," he rasped, his voice gravelly. "And I didn't agree with how you came at that senator on TV. Thought it was a little sharp." The room tensed, a collective held breath. "But then I rewatched it," Earl continued, his voice softening slightly, "twice. And I started thinking I've been talked down to like that before, like I wasn't worth listening to. And my wife, she taught first grade for 30 years. She used to come home with stories that sounded a lot like what you said." He paused, rubbing the worn brim of his ball cap, a moment of deep reflection. "I still don't agree with you on everything, but I appreciate how you said it. With respect, with backbone." A collective breath, long held, finally released in a room, a wave of palpable relief. "That means more than you probably realize," Jasmine said, her smile genuine, heartfelt. Next, a young mother stood, her small daughter clinging shyly to her leg. She spoke slowly, haltingly, describing how her daughter's elementary school had tragically lost its only bilingual aide. "No one talked to her," she said, her voice filled with quiet despair. "She'd cry at school. Nobody explained." Jasmine stepped down from the platform, gracefully crouched to meet the little girl's tear-filled gaze. "Thank you for telling me," she said, her voice gentle. "We can't fix what we ignore." The conversation flowed effortlessly for over an hour, a torrent of raw emotion. People vented, challenged, thanked, or simply listened captivated. No one left, not a single person. When it finally ended, Jasmine lingered, hugging strangers, answering their heartfelt questions, taking names, promising to follow up on every single concern. When Earl shook her hand, he held it longer than expected, a silent gesture of profound respect. "You ever come back to Fort Smith," he said, his voice soft but firm. "You let us know. Folks will listen." She nodded, a promise in her eyes. "I'll come back. But next time, I want to bring a teacher or two from my district. Let you all hear from them directly." This was where it truly began. Not with polished speeches or viral clips, but in rooms like this, uncomfortable, brutally honest, stubbornly, profoundly human. Outside the center, the wind picked up, a restless whisper, clouds rolling slowly, ominously over the river valley. Jasmine zipped her jacket, standing by her car, breathing in a quiet moment of reprieve between the relentless noise. But the real shift wouldn't come in a town hall or a blazing headline. It would come hours later, in the quiet, reflective back seat of a car heading home, where Jasmine would finally articulate the immense burden she had carried, unspoken, until now. The drive out of Fort Smith was quiet at first, a soothing silence. Jasmine sat in the back seat, a gas station coffee clutched in her hand, her staffers Alonzo and Tessa up front, their presence comforting. It had been a long, grueling week, but undeniably fulfilling. Alonzo broke the silence, his voice thoughtful. That guy Earl, I wasn't sure where he was going with that story. Jasmine let out a half laugh, a soft, weary sound. Neither was I. Tessa glanced in the rearview mirror, her eyes meeting Jasmine's. But he landed it. Yeah, Jasmine agreed, sipping the now lukewarm coffee, a bitter taste. He did. She leaned back, staring at the car's ceiling, the landscape blurring outside, a kaleidoscope of greens and browns. She thought of the little girl, her innocent eyes, the Texarkana classroom, the raw desperation, how a man's arrogant smirk had somehow cracked something profound open in countless people. Then she spoke, her voice low, reflective. You all know what's been bothering me this whole time. Neither responded, but both waited, their attention rapt. It's not what he said, she continued, her voice gaining a quiet intensity. It's that he was so comfortable saying it. Like the idea that I didn't understand the bill just made sense to him. Like that was a natural leap, a foregone conclusion. Alonzo looked in the mirror, his brow furrowed. You think he would have done that to anyone else? Oh, I know he wouldn't have, Jasmine replied, her voice tinged with a quiet frustration. But that's not even the part that gets me. The part that stings is how familiar it was. I've heard that tone my whole life. From teachers, from professors, from judges. It's never about the words. It's about how people talk over you because they've already decided you're not worth hearing. Tessa spoke softly, a quiet understanding in her voice. That's why the clip went viral. Jasmine nodded slowly, a profound realization dawning. Not because I said something brilliant, but because everyone watching had been talked over before. In meetings, in classrooms, at their own dinner tables. And maybe for a second, they felt like they answered back. The car fell silent again, not a heavy, oppressive silence, but a thoughtful, reflective one. Alonzo turned down the already low radio, the unspoken acknowledgement hanging in the air. You ever think about what's next after all this? He asked, his voice tentative. Like, do you want to keep doing this? Fighting these same fights over and over. Jasmine didn't answer immediately, her gaze fixed on the blurring landscape. I don't think it's about wanting, she finally said, her voice infused with a deep conviction. It's about needing. I need to be here because the moment I stop, someone else hears silence and thinks it means they're alone again. Tessa nodded quietly, a silent agreement. Then Jasmine added, her voice almost a whisper, I just wish we talked more about what people are actually trying to say when they talk over someone. Like what? Alonzo asked, eager to understand. Like fear, she said, or control, or pride. Sometimes people interrupt because they're scared they'll be proven wrong if they let the other person finish. Silence settled again, thick with unspoken thoughts. Tessa finally asked, her voice soft. What would you have said to him if you'd had 5 more seconds? Jasmine smiled, not smugly, but with a quiet, burning fire in her eyes. I would have said, I'm not here for your comfort. I'm here for your accountability. Alonzo shook his head, grinning, a mixture of awe and amusement on his face. You got to save that for your book. Jasmine laughed softly, taking another sip of her now cold coffee, the moment a brief respite from the storm. Outside, the sun dipped below the tree line, casting a golden, ethereal glow on the highway. It wasn't peace exactly, but it was enough for now, a fragile calm. But the story wasn't over, not yet. Back in Washington, one more seat awaited, one more room to speak in, and this time, everyone was already listening, their attention irrevocably captured. Monday morning in D.C. was crisp and gray, a stark contrast to the previous week's inferno. Jasmine Crockett walked through the Capitol's southeast entrance, her heels clicking a rhythmic cadence, a thick file tucked securely under her arm, her expression unreadable, a mask of quiet determination. She had a speech to give, not for TV cameras, not for fleeting viral moments, but on the sacred ground of the House floor. Her name had been added to the speaker list after 3 colleagues from different states had specifically requested her to share her profound thoughts on public education and equity, a testament to her growing influence. The chamber was already filling, a slow, steady influx of power. Some lawmakers offered polite, almost wary smiles. Others conspicuously looked away, unable to meet her gaze. Senator Kennedy wasn't physically there, but his name, his condescending smirk, his dismissive voice still echoed powerfully in the collective consciousness of the room. Jasmine stood behind the podium, adjusted the microphone to her height, and took a deep, steadying breath, preparing to unleash her truth. "Colleagues," she began, her voice resonating through the chamber. "I wasn't planning to speak today, but sometimes the moment insists on your presence, whether you're ready or not." The room quieted instantly, a sudden, expectant hush. Last week, during a panel on education reform, I was questioned not on my position, not on my facts, but on my very capacity to comprehend the bill I was meticulously discussing. She paused, her eyes sweeping across the hushed room, meeting every gaze, holding it. Now, I'm not here to rehash that moment. I'm not here to demand apologies. I'm here to talk about what happens when we create environments where people feel entitled to dismiss others without cause. Her voice gained a chilling gravity, a quiet power. I'm here to talk about classrooms with broken desks and outrageously outdated textbooks. I'm here to talk about students like Trevian, who tragically share a desk because their school can't afford more, and young girls who cry through math class because there's no one in the building who speaks their language, trapped in linguistic isolation. The room was utterly hushed, some heads bowed in silent contemplation, eyes fixed on hers, transfixed. "I'm here," she declared, her voice ringing with conviction, "because I refuse to sit quietly while the comfort of power continues to brutally silence the experience of reality." A collective breath was held, the tension palpable. She continued, her voice calm and measured, but with undeniable, forceful authority. "Some people have asked me if I regret my tone, if I would change how I responded. And I'll tell you what I told my staff. I'm not here to manage someone else's expectations of civility. I'm here to work. And working means telling the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's painful." A murmur of amen rose from the back, a quiet chorus of agreement. For too long, this body, this institution, has mistakenly equated politeness with fairness. It has rewarded those who aggressively interrupt and dismissed those who pause, who thoughtfully deliberate before they speak. But here's the undeniable truth. Silence does not equal submission, and speaking calmly does not make you any less serious, any less formidable. She closed her folder with a quiet snap, her gaze unwavering, a silent challenge. "I represent people who don't have the luxury of being misunderstood, people who speak with precision because they know they'll only get one precious shot to be heard. And I will not shrink myself, I will not diminish my truth for the comfort of tradition, for the sake of polite society." With that, she stepped back, no grand gesture, no triumphant music cue, just one woman walking away from a microphone after saying exactly what needed to be said, her words hanging in the air, a profound echo. A beat of silence, then applause. Not loud, not explosive, but profoundly real, deeply felt. A few claps turned into more, a ripple effect. Lawmakers stood, some discreetly wiped tears from their eyes. Others simply nodded, perhaps in true understanding for the very first time. Back in her office, Jasmine took off her shoes, a weary sigh escaping her lips, and sank onto the couch, exhaustion finally claiming her. Her staff had left a small, poignant note on her desk, a powerful quote from Shirley Chisholm in bold, defiant handwriting. "If they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair." She smiled, a rare, genuine smile, folded it carefully, and tucked it into her blazer, a talisman of strength. Later that evening, she called her mother, seeking solace in normalcy. They spoke of groceries, a new baby in the family, whether she was eating enough, the grounding normalcy desperately needed after standing tall before the entire country, bearing witness. Before bed, Jasmine wrote one simple, profound line in her notebook. "It's not about the last word. It's about the lasting 1 inch." Then she turned out the light, the silence a comforting embrace. Jasmine's quiet act of defiance on live television had ripped open a gaping fault line in the political landscape, brutally exposing the unspoken power dynamics that governed every single room, every interaction. But the reverberations of that seismic night, the furious energy unleashed online, were just the unsettling beginning. The public, once a passive, disengaged audience, was now an active, enraged participant, demanding a different kind of accountability, a different kind of raw, unvarnished truth. The following weeks blurred into a relentless stream of appearances, not on the glossy, manufactured sets of national news, but in the gritty, real-world spaces where her words truly landed, where they resonated with an almost spiritual intensity. She found herself in community centers in rural Arkansas, navigating veiled threats in small-town diners, and facing skeptical, often hostile eyes in dusty church basements across the South. Each stop wasn't a triumphant victory lap, but a grueling test, a painful relitigation of that Monday night, forcing her to confront the raw, exposed nerve she had so profoundly struck. In one such tense town hall in northern Georgia, a grizzled, older man slowly stood up, his voice trembling with a lifetime of unspoken frustrations, a pent-up reservoir of resentment. "Congresswoman," he began, his voice raspy, "I saw what you did to that senator. And frankly, it made me uncomfortable. We're supposed to be respectful, even when we disagree." The room held its breath, suspended in anticipation. Jasmine didn't flinch, her composure unshaken. "Sir," she replied, her voice calm, yet imbued with an unyielding steel. "With all due respect, what's more uncomfortable? A moment of silence on live television, or a child going to school without enough books, their education jeopardized?" The man sat down slowly, a flicker of something new, something profound, dawning in his eyes. The media, always ravenous for the next compelling narrative, relentlessly tried to box her in, to define her. Was she the angry black woman, a convenient stereotype? The calculated political operative, a Machiavellian chess player? The accidental hero, an unwitting pawn of fate? Each label felt too small, too confining, too conveniently dismissive. She fiercely refused to be defined by a soundbite or a fleeting retweet. "My work isn't about labels," she told Alonzo during a rare, quiet moment in the car between events, her voice tinged with a deep conviction. "It's about lived experience. It's about showing up." But even as her star rose, a subtle, almost imperceptible shift occurred in the hallowed halls of power back in Washington. The Kennedy moment, as it was now widely dubbed, had a chilling, pervasive effect. Lawmakers, particularly those who had once reveled in a similar brand of condescension, suddenly found their voices a little softer, their interruptions fewer, a newfound caution in their demeanor. There was a new, almost imperceptible hesitation before they dared to dismiss a colleague, a spectral ghost of Jasmine's unwavering gaze lingering ominously in the air. The unspoken rules of engagement, long considered sacrosanct and unbreakable, were being rewritten, not by legislation, not by decrees, but by the quiet, undeniable power of a woman who fiercely refused to be silenced, who insisted on being heard. Kennedy, for his part, remained largely out of the public eye, a self-imposed exile, his carefully crafted statement having fallen flat, a pathetic whisper against a roaring gale. His attempts to regain his footing in subsequent congressional sessions felt forced, almost desperate, his usual wit now perceived as hollow, his charm brittle and easily shattered. The political currency he had traded on for decades had depreciated, devalued, and the public, now armed with countless replays of that damning 7-minute clip, was no longer buying his carefully constructed facade. For Jasmine, the true, arduous work was just beginning. The viral moment had undeniably opened doors, granting her access, but also placed an immense, almost crushing weight on her shoulders, a burden of expectation. People saw her as a powerful symbol, a resonant voice for the unheard, and that was a mantle she carried with fierce, unyielding dedication. She began to host a series of listening tours across the country, not just within the familiar confines of her district, but wherever she was invited, creating sacred spaces for people to share their own raw, often painful stories of being dismissed, overlooked, and relentlessly talked over. She spoke to exhausted teachers, to struggling single parents, to hardworking factory workers, validating their experiences, giving them a platform they had never before had, a chance to finally be heard. The road was long, fraught with unseen obstacles, and the challenges immense, almost insurmountable. There are still late nights, still the lingering, profound feeling of exhaustion, still the occasional cruel comment that managed to pierce through the protective layers of noise. But in the quiet, stolen moments, scrolling through a heartfelt message from a young woman in Ohio who had decided to go to law school because of her, or receiving a crumpled crayon drawing from a child in a crowded community center, a simple, profound testament to her impact, Jasmine knew the lasting word had been spoken, etched into the collective consciousness. It wasn't about winning a fleeting debate. It was about creating a sacred space where everyone, finally, had a chance to be truly heard, to be genuinely seen. And that, she knew with unwavering conviction, was a fight worth waging, one conversation, one quiet, courageous act at a time.